Yes, hello.
From totally unknown
I was a high school art teacher for 5 years.
to world famous,
It got over 1 million views.
content creators are on edge.
It feels so not American.
This week on Open Record, the death
It feels like I'm losing like a really good friend.
and resurrection
Well, that was kind of close, guys.
of a social media monster.
Who in this audience goes with TikTok? Many? Yeah, very popular.
And the uncertain future of one nation with liberty and TikTok for all. From the FOX6 studios, this is Open Record. I'm Brian Polson, and I'm here with Open Record's executive producer, Sarah Smith. Hello, Sarah.
Hello.
And we are joined once again by Contact 6's Jenna Sachs. Thanks for being here, Jenna.
No problem.
We are recording this episode on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025, and as of the time of this recording, TikTok is up and running again in the United States. Sort of. It's still not available for download from the Apple and Google app stores, and there are legal questions surrounding President Trump's executive order giving TikTok's parent company ByteDance another 75 days to sell off its U.S. operation. The whole ordeal has raised a lot of questions about national security, censorship, First Amendment rights, and much more. We're going to talk about why this matters and what happens next. But first, how we got here. We'll talk about that after the break. And we are back on Open Record. Sarah, Jenna, first of all, are you TikTok users? Do you have it downloaded? Do you make videos? I don't know. What's your...
I have wasted, I don't know, maybe that's a bad word. I have spent a lot of hours. It's easy to rabbit hole on TikTok.
As designed, right?
Yes.
It's designed to make you keep
fascinating
scrolling.
to me, and it's perfect for my attention span. My daughter and I would do dances. I think I had only posted like one of them, but you know, all the viral TikTok dances that seemingly all the cool kids know. But you can find everything. There's cooking, decorating, life hacks, stuff. So again, to your point, it's easy to all of a sudden I look up, I'm like, oh, it's dark out. I just spent a lot of time.
Are you similar, Jenna?
I'm trying to figure out a way to answer this where I don't sound 100 years old, because I did try it for a little while. Work was encouraging us to try it, but I felt like it was just a lot coming at me. I felt like it was just kind of being shouted at and inundated it by just scrolling through, and maybe it would have personalized for me over time, but it was just a lot for me in that moment, and it just felt like it was all washing over me, and I was kind of being assaulted by this app, so I didn't really like it.
So you are not using it, which means you're safe from China.
Well, maybe. I have downloaded once, and then
I did similar to you, Sarah. I downloaded it, but it's funny what you say it gives you. It gives you, what did you say, decorating and other things.
Cooking,
no, for me it was stand-up comedy, and it was stretching, and it was. But once you start to like a thing or watch a video, well, then it gives you more and more. That's how the algorithm is designed to feed you content you are likely to watch and interact with, and it works extremely well.
Yeah.
And this thing went from nowhere to everywhere really, really fast. And I have a little timeline I'm going to run down here before we get to our first guest. You remember the app Musical.ly?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I do.
My daughter was on Musical.ly. She had friends that were doing it, and it was a lip sync app, and it was very popular, actually quite popular. It was a pretty successful app. In 2014 is when that started. A couple of friends in China started this thing up. 3 years later, they sold it for something like $1 billion, I think it was, whatever it was, to TikTok. They had 200 million users by that time, sold it to TikTok. That was 2017. In 2018, this is just 7 years ago, TikTok merged the two apps. So Musical.ly goes away. It's all TikTok now. By 2019, the federal government in the U.S. fined TikTok nearly $6 million for collecting data from minors under the age of 13, the first sign of trouble with this data collection. Later that year, Senator Marco Rubio and others in Congress called for a federal investigation into that merger, and that's the first time they raised the issue of censorship of issues sensitive to China being a concern, that this Chinese ownership could cause problems for U.S. users. In 2020, it was actually President Trump 45, who threatened to ban TikTok in the U.S. in retaliation for China's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. And he gave TikTok at the time 90 days to divest, to sell off its U.S. operation, and that eventually sort of trickled out and went away. By April of 2022, TikTok had become the most downloaded app in the world. So that time between when President Trump threatened to ban it and TikTok becoming the most dominant, 2 years. 2 years. It's the number one most downloaded app in the world.
Wow.
And the FBI starts raising national security concerns. December of 22, the U.S. government bans TikTok on government-issued devices. And then last year, April of 2024, President Biden signs a law that forces ByteDance, that's the parent company, the owner of TikTok in China, to sell its U.S. operation or shut down. And the deadline was just obviously earlier this month. And all of this stuff is leading up to you have the Supreme Court. So there's a ByteDance sues over that law. Yeah. And the Supreme Court finally hears it January 10th. They uphold that ban. They uphold the law. And then TikTok shuts down its U.S. service. We talked about that a lot on FOX6 News.
Crisis mode for all people who love TikTok.
Users,
that was just days ago.
Oh, yeah.
Was, yeah.
I mean, there are videos of teenage girls bawling and crying. And, I'm losing a friend here.
Yes.
But they shut it down, and then they brought it right back. And this all times out with the inauguration of Donald Trump, 47, who comes in. The one who first said, I'm going to shut this thing down, now says, actually, it's a pretty great thing, and we're going to keep it around for at least another 75 days. He signs an executive order. There's still questions about the legality of that executive order as we sit here talking right now. And again, but you might see this Sunday on FOX6 News. You might listen to this some other time. As we recorded on Wednesday, that's where we stand right now. Thoughts or questions? I mean, that timeline, it seems like so much happened so fast.
It's wild to me that, like, has an app or anything really, I'm just trying to think in history, like, that has been this divisive and just back and forth, and like, it's an app. And yes, I mean, you can go into whether China is getting information from people in the US or whatever, but the fact that this has become such a thing over a social media app is just wild to me.
Right. And the fact that there are so many users for something with so many warnings attached to it, that the government is debating taking it down and banning it, that would often be enough for some people to say, oh no, I don't want to do that. But they must like it so much.
In the land of like scams and schemes and getting information and being really careful with your stuff, there are people on complete opposite sides where they're like, oh yeah, I know that there are some warnings out there. I don't care. I love TikTok. Then there's the others who are like, I am not downloading it. I'm not looking at it. I'm protecting my information, whether or not they end up getting it.
Yeah. And for me, the big question that I would like to ask one of our experts today is, well, what is the real risk? Like, what am I risking by using it as an individual? And why do we care so much about this information?
Yep.
Well, that's a perfect segue into our first guest, because he is an expert who can answer some of these questions. He is a computer science professor at Marquette University in Milwaukee and director of Marquette's Center on Data, Ethics, and Society. Michael Zimmer joins us right after the break. And we are back on Open Record, and we are joined by Marquette University consumer science professor Michael Zimmer. Michael, welcome to Open Record. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Brian. Happy to be here.
So first, I want to ask, what is the director? You're director of the Center for Data, Ethics, and Society. What does that mean?
We're a center that really spans across campus, recognizing the impact of data, computer technologies, algorithms, now AI on almost all parts of our lives. So trying to approach this from not just a technical approach, but also a social and ethical approach. So we hold events, we run classes, we do trainings to try to really make sure that when we teach our students or engage in the community, that we're approaching this from an ethical lens.
So, Jenna, I'll let you ask the question, because I think right before the break, you asked the question, I think, on everyone's mind.
Right. So we have this extremely popular app, but at the same time, we're hearing discussions about national security concerns, which is kind of alarming. And I wonder what that means for the individual, the user. What exactly is our government concerned about here, and what should people as individuals be concerned?
I think in the broad sense, this is a general concern with any app that we have in terms of what kind of data is it collecting. Is it doing things beyond the pure function that users are downloading that app for? And then what's happening with that kind of content? So I think TikTok is certainly the most front of mind example of this, but nearly any app on our phone, especially things like Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, have similar abilities to sort of track what users are interested in and do something with that data. I think the other side of the concern has to do with, are the owners of that app able to shape what we see, and the way that the algorithm works, the way that certain content might be prioritized, or maybe even other content could be banned. And so again, that's a concern that exists across many different apps. TikTok is just one example where, of course, its connection to China creates a little bit larger concern for many people.
Is that why? Is that why there's more concern over TikTok versus, to your point, Facebook, Instagram, any of the other apps that are sitting on my phones right now?
I think so. I mean, we've had these concerns. Those of us who study these spaces have looked at this and talked about this for decades now, really, once we started having these kinds of social apps. I think it got the attention, in politics, in the political sphere, because of China's connection. And that's been sort of what, has been run with. There are legitimate concerns, especially I know many governments, including the Wisconsin state government, doesn't want to have that app on government phones because they're not totally sure about the security of the app. And that's a reasonable sort of cybersecurity concern. But I do think the connection to China is what really has made this much more on the front of people's minds compared to just any average app that they have on their phone.
I want to break this down for a minute because you talk about the concern that China might, on the one hand, maybe feed us things that are sanitized in some way. Maybe the anti-China stuff gets left out. And so there's sort of a propaganda or a bias to the information. That's one level of concern. But is there concern that this data, that something more is happening with this data, that they are in fact using it, this sort of foreign adversary government, to spy on American citizens? Does it go that far? And if so, is that realistic? Is that really happening? Is this all theoretical? What's going on there?
I think that's largely a hypothetical concern. I suppose that's certainly possible. In many ways, I can't imagine that they would be cared about me or you or an average person. They might care if it's a U.S. senator is sitting on TikTok and has the app on their phone. That might be a target for that kind of monitoring of a particular user. But at the end of the day, the kind of use of this data, just like with Instagram, is mostly going to be around advertising and trying to understand what are the interests you have and how do we target ads to that. And that, again, is, I think, a privacy concern that spans beyond TikTok. But bringing in that China lens does certainly raise the rhetoric for a lot of people on this.
To that point, Michael, I was reading that among the things that TikTok tracks and allows third-party trackers to track is your location, your precise location, your search history, your IP address, and of course the videos you watch and how long you spend watching them. That's not unique to TikTok necessarily. But right. Is it different if Mark Zuckerberg knows where I am and I'm a U.S. senator versus communist China knows where I am and I'm a U.S. senator? I mean, is that where the concern comes in?
So I think there is a difference. You're right that they're able to track location. Nearly every app has that ability. Now, some phones and operating systems give you more controls to turn that off. But that is a big part of the app ecosystem right now is location tracking and the value of that data. I do think there's reasons to be concerned if someone like Meta or Zuckerberg or Elon Musk has access to that data in the broad sense. The difference, I suppose, would be that those companies, our government and at least our public has a little bit more access to demand transparency, to pass rules or guidelines in terms of how that data can be used, putting restrictions around that data. And of course, a company that's based in China, we have little ability to sort of exert that kind of regulatory or social pressure. So I think that is one reasonable set of concerns on why the China piece of this does matter.
Jenna, you said something so interesting before we got on here. You were talking about another social media app, powerhouse, Facebook.
Right.
And you looked at the BBB and found, what did you find?
I found the BBB in California gives Facebook an F rating for not responding to any of the complaints sent to it. But you also brought up that's free,
it's
right?
Free.
So maybe people overlook the fact that there's a bad rating when it's free and it's fun.
If I had to pay for a service, maybe I care that it has an F rating. If it's free and it gives me all kinds of cool stuff, maybe I don't care. I bring that up to say this. With TikTok, users don't seem to generally care that China might or might not be spying on them. In fact, when it shut down for a day or when there was talk of it shutting down, there was a huge number of users who went over to something called Red Note, which is also a Chinese application and is similar to TikTok. And there were people posting videos that literally said, "Here, China, here's my information. If you want to know that I like cats in pajamas, great." Users don't seem to care, but our government still does.
Yeah, I think that we see that kind of disconnect a lot. In some ways, users may not care because they just may not be fully aware of the nature of the threats and those kinds of concerns. But it does seem to be a little bit of a disconnect between what's popular, what's providing some utility to millions of people in our country, and then what is, maybe it's just a group of politicians that see this as an opportunity to be tough on China or some other kind of motivation. So that disconnect is real, and it was surprising to see that shift to Red Note, another Chinese platform that hasn't had any scrutiny. So that's often putting people into more danger if there's danger in this sphere. So yeah, this is a real complicated kind of mess right now.
So President Trump, it's kind of like some people are saying that he's kind of talking out of two sides of his mouth. So he was the one that kind of started the talk of the ban in 2020, but then was also the one most recently who had the, save TikTok. He credited the app with helping him win over young voters in this election. And then he's the one that kind of, he had the ByteDance CEO at his inauguration. He's claiming he saved TikTok, all that stuff. What do you make of that kind of 180?
Yeah, in some sense, this sounds like maybe a classic Trump approach where just whatever way the winds are blowing is where he's going to align himself with. I think he saw the value of TikTok probably through his campaign and his reelection. He certainly seems to have the ear of people like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg who would, largely benefit if TikTok was banned, but now he's trying to save it. So it's kind of confusing to figure out if there's a consistent policy stance in that place. It was interesting when TikTok was down on Sunday, the little message they had on the website seemed to be kind of talking to Trump directly and almost thanking him and trying to sort of help make sure that he was still happy so they could get the result that they wanted. So I think all the parties here are trying to figure out the right way to kind of negotiate to get what they want.
Well, and we've seen the power, obviously, of social media to influence public thought. They're, long gone are the days when the three major networks controlled what you knew, or the newspapers and that sort of thing. And because of that, obviously, people like President Trump are seeing the power of having great influence on these social media platforms. We've seen at the very same time that President Trump is talking about 50% ownership by the U.S. government in TikTok. We also have Mark Zuckerberg saying we're no longer going to fact check things on Facebook. And then, of course, you have Elon Musk, who's very closely aligned with the president, who owns X, formerly Twitter. So we're seeing a lot of this sort of consolidation of ownership and interest in these major influences. Is that a concern in the long run in terms of sort of almost a state-run media? Is that something? I mean, I know you're not a journalism professor. It's certainly the thing that comes to my mind as a journalist.
No, absolutely. I suspect the 50% U.S. ownership is just some kind of tactic. I can't imagine that playing out. I'm trying to think back to like maybe when the government took a small stake in some car companies during that financial crisis. But this is different, and that to me would be an extremely problematic solution to this particular situation. But there are some concerns here. And again, and I think to your earlier point, it almost seems that there's a little bit of switching positions between whether or not they're happy with how social media platforms might be fact checking or restricting certain information, but now they want to get into that business. It would be really troubling, I think for many of us who study, social media or just journalism in general to see our government take such a position.
For the people who use these apps to make a living or enjoy posting all the time, do they need to be concerned about continuing to post and share videos? Or do you think the app will just not be available to them at some point and they can't? How do you think that will go about happening?
That's going to be interesting to sort of watch. And that a lot of us are really interested in how are the sort of the creator economy gonna react to this. It's interesting because, TikTok doesn't share revenue. There isn't really a strong program to support creators, and they're just hoping that they can create some fame and then maybe get some other side deals with brands or products. In some ways, I think the creators are pretty flexible in their ability to sort of pivot to new platforms. It's unclear if something like YouTube or Instagram and their short video might become the new place. But if we think about it, we weren't really hearing about TikTok a year ago. So a year from now, who knows what kind of platform might emerge. But I tend to believe that the people who create things, that they don't have to worry from a risk standpoint, but they might be needing to start thinking about where did they need to pivot, their sort of enterprise if this platform is no longer available.
Michael, I know we'd have to send you on your way. We really want to thank you for taking the time to do this, especially on short notice. But I want to leave with this question. A year from now, if we are sitting here, do you think TikTok will be here? Will it still be around?
Of course, it's hard to say. I do think there's a pretty good chance that the ByteDance will find someone in the US to take over the platform. And that's the easiest way to sort of make this ban and to comply with this law, is to have, whether it's Oracle or some private investors or who knows what it might be, run the US version of the platform that has no connections or ties to China. I kind of suspect that that's where we're going to end up.
Is it just a matter of negotiation at this point?
I think so. Yeah.
All right. Well, Professor Michael Zimmer, Marquette University, thank you so much for being here on Open Record, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Brian, Jenna, and Sarah. Good to see you.
So over the past, 7 years, we talked about how this thing has grown, and it's not just grown as something for users, but for people to market their businesses. And we have another guest who's going to be joining us after the break. It's transformed a Wisconsin school teacher into a social media star thanks to her. I got to pick this up. Thanks to her videos about spooky lakes. That's right, spooky lakes. She's got a lot of followers. We're going to talk to Gio Rutherford when we come right back. And welcome back to Open Record. We are joined by Gio Rutherford, who is in, am I right, Sauk City, Wisconsin? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Artist, a teacher, and of course, a social media celebrity. You have 1.8 million followers on TikTok alone. I can't wait to find out how this all came about. But I want to start, Gio, with sort of your background. Before TikTok and all this stardom came around, you're a high school art teacher. Tell us a little bit about how that started and led to where you are now.
Well, I'm the daughter of two teachers, and as a result, I myself became a teacher. I taught high school art, ceramics, and jewelry, which was kind of wild. And then I decided to go to grad school, and it was right during grad school the pandemic hit. And then during the pandemic, like everybody else, I went to TikTok, and that's when I started my weird TikTok journey that I've been on for 5 years now.
I should point out grad school in Milwaukee, right? UWM?
Yeah. Yep. Here in you guys are in Milwaukee. Yep.
Yes.
In Milwaukee.
How did you get into that particular genre? Like, I just feel like we were talking probably before we even started recording, how TikTok is such it's just so much. You can find cooking and dancing and life hacks. And so how did you get into what you are now known for on TikTok?
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes it's hard to give people advice about how to become TikTok famous because I posted one video and it went viral.
Wow.
And then I
what
was
was it
kind of
about?
like on my little road.
What were
right
you
off the
talking
bat.
about?
So the very first video I ever posted was actually about my graduate program. I was doing artist books during that program, which are like weird books, kind of. They're artsy, weird books. They're pieces of art in and of themselves. And I posted about a book that had a bunch of tubes in it. And it was, of course, this is the way you go famous on TikTok, is you make everybody really happy or you make everybody really angry.
Ooh, okay.
Or you make everybody really sad. And so I made everybody really angry because I was showing them this box of tubes and I was like, this is a book. And everybody was like, mm-mm.
That's
not a book.
Minute. I saw this video and now look, I have to be honest. It's a really cool creative thing because what it took for you to collect what was in each of those tubes to me is in and of itself a phenomenal amount of work.
I'm gonna have to look this up.
But that being said, I did think, I wonder what made that go uber viral like that.
Yeah.
So it's people were arguing over, that's not a book. It's stuff. Right?
Exactly.
Is that it?
Yeah, and it's trash from the beach, so it's even worse. It's like people are like, "Are you trying to sell us a box of trash? Like this is awful."
Oh my God.
But it was from Bradford Beach. I was going to Bradford Beach. I went to Bradford Beach every single day for 90 days during that high water and erosion in 2019, and I just collected everything from the beach, from natural material to very much unnatural material. And as a result, I collected this full picture of the beach. And then the box of tubes was a way for somebody to read the beach, to kind of understand what was going on at the beach and what is happening to our Great Lakes and what's happening to Bradford Beach in Milwaukee. So it's kind of an interesting, people enjoyed it, but also they were just like, I love it, but it's not a book. So it's kind of it was a conversation starter. And then all of my videos were about books and artist books for a while. And then I posted my first video about the Great Lakes. And it was a basic introduction to the Great Lakes. Where did they come from? What's going on with them today? And how did it relate to my work that I was doing? And that went what I considered mega viral. It was like 4 or 5 million views.
Holy cow.
That original video isn't even up today because I got so much hate that I redid the whole video because I didn't say Canada in the video. I kept saying America, and all the Canadians like lost their mind. And so that was my first like viral video.
So wait, the way to get one of my stories or one of these episodes of Open Record to go viral is we have to say something controversially wrong.
I'm just feeling like a failure.
No, I'm taking advice. You either have to make them happy, sad, mad.
But I am jealous because you're talking about 4 or 5 million views. If we had 4 million views on a podcast episode, I would be over the moon. Anyway, but
it comes with a lot of trials and tribulations. Like when you do go viral, and I've gone pretty viral at the beginning there. That first year I would go viral and it was like kind of sickening. Like it was hard. It was emotional. I was stressed. They would nitpick because they were 1-minute videos in 2020 and 2019. And they would nitpick every simplification because as an educator, you're trying to simplify stuff. Yeah. And as a result, you're kind of twisting the words a little bit, or you're not quite making it clear. And as a result, that people would just lose their minds over little tiny details that I would say. And I would lose my mind. Like as an educator, as someone who prides myself in being accurate, I would be so upset by feeling like I was creating misleading content in any way. So those early days were really hard. They were stressful.
Does your phone, this is like just my curiosity, when something like that happens and you have this video and it goes viral or mega viral, does your phone just ding a lot? Like I always wonder what happens like when these videos get shared and comments and stuff, or do you like turn off notifications, or what happens?
Yeah, I turn off all of my notifications. I don't have anything that shows up on my phone at all about TikTok or Instagram or any of that. Like I have a video has 1 million views on Instagram right now. It's like currently being viewed by a lot of people, and I'm just not reading the comments. At this point, like there's
I don't know how you could keep up if you tried.
That's right. Okay.
So how do you transition?
Early on, those at the beginning, I would read every comment. I would read every comment. I was freaked out. I was reading every comment. I did not know what was going on. I was so stressed out. And now I read comments for the first day, and I respond to stuff and I engage with it. I make sure that everything looks like it's correct and everybody's like I make sure I read the room on the comment section, and then I kind of stop looking at it because it gets to be too much, especially during Spooky Lake month where I got 45 million views last year. I think I had 3,000 comments on every video. I just can't keep up with that when I'm doing 31 videos in a month.
Before we talk about what's happening with TikTok, Spooky Lakes, what is Spooky Lakes? Where did that come from and what's it all about?
Everybody wants it to have some like grand, amazing intro story, but it was just October 2nd in 2020, and I had been making lake videos and just having fun. Like early TikTok was just about having fun, and that was why I was able to kind of figure out what I was doing and garner the audience that I have by just posting and seeing what happened and just having fun with it. And one of those things was that on October 2nd, I said, yes, hello, it's Spooky Lake month. I didn't even have like, we're going to do 31 days of haunted hydrology. There was a lot of things that I kind of picked up along the way and kind of edits. And that year it was only 1-minute videos. So they were yet again, pretty short and like kind of bad. Don't watch those videos. They're pretty awful. Then it just, the next year, everybody was like, are you doing that again? Are you doing that again? And then, then we hit year 2 and it was a huge year for Spooky Lakes. And then every year since then, it's been 5 seasons of Spooky Lakes. Millions, hundreds, over 100 million views at this point. I'm more than that probably. And and we're just rolling with it.
And if anybody's watched these, if you haven't, you've got to go look at these. Look for Spooky Lakes on TikTok. And in every video, there's like, it's like your eyes, like just like you're barely peeking above the water. Yeah. Was that I almost thought we would see you that way this whole time. Awesome. It's weird to see all of you because that's what everyone knows. Like you're from your eyes.
Yeah.
Yes, hello. Today's the last day of Spooky Lake Month, where we did 31 days of haunted hydrology.
If you're listening to this, you're going to have to go see it or watch, look for our video version of our podcast on Fox Local or on YouTube.
Estimated that some 10,000 people have died in Lake Superior.
But anyways, was that just something you did and decided I'm going to keep this going or what?
The forehead thing?
Yeah.
This thing?
Yeah.
That was because I'm a 35-year-old millennial who couldn't figure out how to move my head out of the way. That was early TikTok. You couldn't zoom and move your head to different spots. And so I just stuck my head at the bottom. And I said, hello, yes, or something like that in the first video. And it just stuck. And I've just done it ever since. And so people on TikTok, they kind of get it. They've been seeing me for 5 years. Like, they know what to expect. One thing I think people should know, in case you've never heard of Spooky Lakes, is that it's not actually about supernatural or ghosts or ghouls. It's about environmental disasters. It's about shipwrecks. It's about the natural world being spooky all by herself. And so that's the other thing that people don't necessarily know, is that Spooky Lakes is nonfiction. It's like the real world.
Yeah, it's not like boo. It's like
what's weird about it.
Can we talk about this and how it becomes like a job? Because at some point you start making money on this. How do you make money on TikTok? TikTok. Again, I'm 100 years old today.
That's okay.
We'll fix it in post.
How do you make money on TikTok?
I think people it's interesting. People don't really understand how creators make money, and they think TikTok pays a lot. But here, this is so interesting to me. In October this year, so this past October in 2024, I had around at least 45 million views on TikTok for the month of October for Spooky Lake Month, or 31 days. And I made $7,000 from the app. And I donated that to the Lake Lure Asheville hurricane relief because it was relevant to Spooky Lakes. But that wasn't that much money. Instead, I actually make my money from selling my artwork and selling my stickers and selling pins and prints and shirts for Spooky Lake Month, which is really fun. That's like the fun aspect of what I do, which is different than a lot of other creators. I never really do a lot of promotional stuff where somebody else pays me to do a video. I don't really do a lot of that. And instead I just sell my art. So it's kind of fun because I get to be an artist who's talking about science and about spooky stuff. It's like all my favorite things in the world kind of managed to come together.
My entire Spooky Lakes book using a type of paint called gouache.
And so it's very easy for me, at least during Spooky Lake Month, to make the same amount of money I made as a teacher in a whole year in a single month in October. And then I'm kind of set for the whole year.
Wow.
It's crazy.
You've built this huge following, which has taken a tremendous amount of work, a lot of commitment, and then TikTok is threatened. It might go away. And in fact, for 14 hours, it did go away. Can you talk about what that process has been like for you as a content creator who's built this huge following and makes a living doing this?
Yeah. Well, and it was a hard following to develop because it's educational content and it's art content. And that's not the same type of content like pranks or dance videos or the things that people think of when they think of like mega viral TikTok stars. I kind of had to really work so hard for that 1.8. Like, I have been tooth and nail for 5 years, just like working on educational content. Each video takes me 8 hours to make. Like, it is not just me jumping on my phone and doing something that might be a little bit easier. I'm not saying that type of content creation is easy necessarily. It's just that this educational content is kind of a different animal. It's hard to garner an audience over learning stuff on TikTok. So for me, the TikTok ban, like, it's just kind of scary. It feels like I'm like on Saturday night before we realized it was going to be 14 hours. It truly felt like I just lost my job. It felt like my job was just taken away from me when it was successful and I was doing well and I was, making a living and supporting myself off of art and education, which is such an incredible kind of wholesome thing to be doing on the internet these days, is like just supporting yourself through your own skills and your own passions and the things that you care about and you're excited about. So yeah, it really was quite the blow. It's happened a lot over the last couple of years. This conversation has kind of come around. But yeah, it really hit me hard on Saturday. I was like, oh my gosh. And now I'm kind of numb. I don't know about you guys. I feel a little numb now. I'm like, what is even happening? I don't even know what's going to happen now.
I wonder now that it feels like it's sort of a limbo period for TikTok because it's back, sort of.
Ish.
You can't download it from the app stores right now. And there are still questions and legal threats for those who are distributing it. You know, are you doing something wrong? Are you in violation of the law? For you, is it back to normal for now? Are you still going to be creating videos? When last I looked, I think your last video had still been before, unless I'm wrong, tell me, but it had been before the shutdown. So are you still going to be creating new content for it, or are you waiting to see how this plays out?
Well, the other aspect of my role on TikTok and what I've been doing the last couple of years is that I don't make that many videos. What's kind of amazing about Spooky Lake Month is that I can wait a whole year, and on October 1st, everybody shows up. And so that's been what's a little hard about my content and the ban is that I don't really make a lot of videos outside of Spooky Lake Month. I make a few if like something comes up that I'm excited about, like when Lake Tulare returned in California or when Death Valley flooded. If there's something that's like lake related or water related that's like popular, then I'll make a video about it. But I don't make that many videos. I kind of get through life by just being a working artist and a working illustrator and a working author. But I rely on October 1st. I need to be able to get onto that app and everybody's waiting for me. And we have a month of Spooky Lake. So yeah, I did post a video about the polar vortex yesterday because it was relevant, but it was an old video that I just reposted because it's like, here you go, guys. We're going through the polar vortex again. Just a reminder, this is what it is.
My big question, though, is why does it have to be TikTok? You do have a following on Instagram. Why is TikTok so important and so good for this kind of marketing versus any of the other social media sites that are out there?
I'm sure you've heard it from other people, but there is something special about the algorithm on TikTok. It just does it differently. It does it really well. Also, for me personally, my audience is just so loving and so supportive and excited on TikTok. And I hate to say it, they're just not very nice on Instagram. People are not nice on Instagram. I don't know what it is about Instagram versus TikTok. I don't know if it's because I'm homegrown on TikTok. So my community there has seen me for 5 years and they know who I am. And Instagram, the algorithm is kind of sporadic. So they're kind of showing videos here and there. They're not really cultivating that type of community that TikTok is cultivating with its algorithm. People who are seeing my videos are seeing Hank Green videos. They're seeing videos from other creators like The Forager and like people who are all kind of like-minded and like interested in similar things, not necessarily like-minded, but like interested in similar things like science and education and whatnot. So for me, going to other apps is like throwing myself to like a bit of a wild animal type of energy where I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just like tossing myself into this pit where nobody knows who I am. They don't know why my forehead's at the bottom. They don't know why I talk the way I do. They don't know what Spooky Lake Month is. There's no consistency. TikTok shows my Spooky Lake Month videos to people who want to see them every day in October and they know it's coming. You know, the other apps, they're just kind of sporadic and they're not really, it's just random. The algorithm is not doing the same work.
I'm interested in whether you have privacy concerns after all the discussion that's being had by lawmakers over issues like privacy, over the Chinese government possibly having access to your data. There have been discussions about, censorship and all sorts of issues, but are you concerned about your private data?
No. And I don't know if a lot of TikTok people, at least from the people that I've seen talk about this, are not concerned about that. Now, I'm sure there's things I don't know about what's going on with like what the Congress knows and what the Senate knows and what people know at the higher, like something might be going on that I'm not aware of. Obviously, there is for sure. But personally, I'm just not so concerned about that. Especially this idea of it being propaganda. Like TikTok, people are not stupid. Like people, at least on TikTok, I get the feeling that people are not dumb. They have, media literacy where they can recognize when something is a little bit off or weird, or when a video is just trying to tell us something that's not true. I would like to have faith in our ability to identify stuff. That doesn't mean that I don't think that TikTok has a ethical responsibility And I do question whether it achieves that responsibility. Like I think it's the same way that Meta and YouTube, they all have a responsibility to the people that they are showing or like using as to show content to. So yeah, it's for sure complicated, and it's upsetting.
I wish we had so much more time with you because you are entertaining to talk to. This has been fantastic, but I want to wrap it up with this. I want to ask this last question. You obviously are hoping TikTok sticks around. It's not from what I'm hearing here. A year from now, do you think TikTok will still be here, and will you still be producing videos on it?
That's a really good question. I feel like I really thought the ban was just going to happen, and then that was going to be that. I was kind of one of those people that was like, put my phone down at 10:30 and walked away and stared at a wall for an hour. I was like, this is over, you know? So I'm skeptical. People on TikTok are really concerned about this idea that they're just going to sell it to one of these mega corporations in the United States or one of these people with lots of money in the United States, like Meta or like Elon Musk. That's kind of a big concern. If that happens, I'm not sure if the app will be the same. I'm not sure if it'll become a separate entity. Like right now, what's wonderful about the app is that you're pretty much connected with everyone else in the world. If we're selling the app and we're not getting the algorithm, America's just going to be in a little American bubble. That's just not the same thing as being part of this global community on TikTok. So I don't know what's going to happen. I think I am mentally prepared more so now than I was previously to accept that I might have to do a bit of a career change in the future.
Well, we thank you so much for your time here today talking with us. If you're watching, if you're listening, look out for Geo Rutherford Spooky Lakes Month in October for sure, whether it's on TikTok, Instagram, or wherever else. Thank you for being here on Open Record.
Thank you so much for having me. I wish you 4.5 million views in the near future.
Oh, we love it. Let's hope this one goes that way. All right, we're going to take a break. We will go off the record when we come right back. And it's time for us to go off the record. This is the part of the podcast where we get a little more casual and have a little fun by answering a question for which we have done no preparation unless Sarah Smith is the one who did it.
You know what,
she
guys?
has the question.
After all of this, I was like, let's just do a TikTok dance. That'll be our off the record. So
No one wants to see that. Not me, anyway.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I don't know if I was going to try to transition out of that. Okay, we're talking about board games.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Obviously, with it being cold yesterday, I feel like, and the kids were out of school, very much one of the things is like, okay, let's go to the den closet and see if there's a game in there we could play. A survey came out, and the America's favorite board game in 2024, based on average monthly Google searches, was Sorry.
That's a classic.
It is.
I can see why that's
funny.
easy.
We have like 4 versions of Sorry in the closet. I don't know why.
Like
but
character
Sorry
versions,
sliders, and then there's different.
Monopoly came in second. Chess was third, and then some backgammon and checkers, which that's a board game.
Sure,
That's fair.
sure.
Yeah. So, do you guys have a favorite?
I mean, does cribbage count as a board game? That's my
it's a
favorite.
board.
Yeah,
I
actually,
love
I think,
cribbage.
Oh
yeah,
boy.
I'm really proud that like my kids can do it at like age 6.
Yes.
Like, I love
Good for
cribbage.
math.
Can
we have an open record cribbage tournament? I love cribbage. It's,
Yes, I will skunk you.
Oh.
I will double skunk you.
Oh.
Hey,
That
mark
confident.
it.
The gauntlet has been thrown down. We're gonna play
We're
cribbage.
doing it.
This
I
is
would
gonna
love
be
game
good.
night, open record game night.
I've actually been teaching my wife cribbage so that we can play together. I love playing.
Oh, it's
that.
a great porch game. It does not require a lot of things. It's just the deck of cards and the board.
It's simple.
It's so great.
Yeah.
I do like trivia games that have a board component, like Trivial Pursuit, classic kind of thing. There's a newer one called, and I forget the name of it now, but it's generational, and I can't think of what the name of it is. But every corner that you're in, you get a different generation's questions.
Yeah.
So it's fun to play with family of different generations because the millennials or the Gen Zers will do great in their category, but they don't get the boomer stuff.
Yeah,
and I get the Gen X, but the other stuff. So I like that. That's fun for me.
What about you, Sarah?
I mean, I think we have this game from when I grew up, which I think actually probably came from my parents as they were growing up, but it's called Aggravation. And,
I don't know that.
Oh yes, I remember that.
And it's like got these little marbles, and you have a home base,
and then
you have you go around, and there's a star kind of in the middle.
Yes.
We pull that one out probably more than any other game.
I always love the little marbles in the little circle.
Yeah.
There's something tactile
until
about
one
it.
of my kids accidentally bumps it with their knee and all the marbles just roll everywhere and you go, well, game over.
Yeah.
Sarah's lost her marbles.
No one can remember where the pieces go.
Can I ask you guys, what is the worst board game and why is it Mousetrap?
See, the problem is my kids have my old game of Mousetrap, so all the cardboard pieces are like warped on the edges. The
rubber band is always gone.
The rubber band is shredded. It's just, and then my kid gets frustrated that he can't put it together because all the pieces are all warped.
I have more to say, but we'll have to talk off air because we are out of time. We would talk more about Tic Tac, the board game, but we can't. We'll we'll wrap things up when we come back after this. If you have a topic you would like us to discuss on Open Record or an issue you think we should investigate for Fox 6 News, send us an email to fox6investigators@vox.com. As always, thank you to the people who make this podcast possible. Sarah Smith, obviously Jenna Sachs, our executive producer. Well, that's her right
That's
here.
me.
Our editor, that's what I meant to say,
So
Dave
nice.
Machuda.
Thanked her twice.
And he is also manning the video switcher, but we'll also thank our chief photographer, Kale Zimney. With that, I'm Brian Polson, and we'll be back next week.